9 fruits you should be eating and 8 not if you are a diabetic. These are the 9 fruits nutrition researchers keep pointing to for people managing diabetes, and the 8 fruits working quietly against everything those 9 are trying to do. Maybe you've been told to watch your fruit intake, without anyone actually explaining which fruits, or why. Here's that explanation. Diabetics got a blunt warning for decades. Fruit has sugar, sugar raises blood glucose, so fruit is dangerous. Too simple, and in places flat wrong. What actually matters is the glycemic index, a measure of how fast a food raises blood sugar once it hits your system. Layered on top of that sits glycemic load, which accounts for how much carbohydrate a normal serving actually contains, and for fruit specifically, load beats index almost every time. Some fruits that look alarming on paper barely move the needle once you look at the portion people really eat, and berries and citrus land at the low end, glycemic index in the 22 to 43 range. Tropical fruit runs moderate, 51 to 65. Only 2 fruits earn a spot in genuinely high territory, and you'll meet both on today's second list, watermelon and lychee. Whole fruit and fruit juice are not the same food wearing different outfits, and the gap between them matters more than most people assume. In one widely cited comparison, apple juice hit the bloodstream roughly 11 times faster than a whole apple did, and insulin afterwards spiked far higher in the juice drinkers. Strip the fiber, and you've pulled the brake pedal clean out of the car. Canned fruit in syrup runs the same play, stripping fiber while piling sugar on top of whatever the fruit started with. Hold on to both of those ideas because they explain nearly every distinction on both lists today. Fiber pulls double duty here too. Beyond slowing the sugar in the fruit itself, it can also slow how fast carbohydrate from other foods in the same meal gets absorbed. Why not just cut fruit out entirely then, even the fruits landing on today's second list? Because the research doesn't point that direction. Whole fruit consumption, independent of the blood sugar question entirely, gets linked to a lower risk of heart disease, better metabolic and gut health, and in several studies, lower fasting blood glucose over time compared to diets that skip fruit altogether. Fiber, vitamins, and plant compounds right along with fruit that the rest of a typical diet often runs short on, and not one of the fruits discussed today, including the 8 needing portion awareness, comes with a recommendation to remove it from the diet completely. Precision, not restriction, is the actual message buried in the research. One more piece of context before the lists start. Glycemic index, glycemic load, grams of sugar, every number coming up traces back to population-level research and lab testing, not your body specifically. Medication, the rest of the meal, activity level that day, and plenty of other variables mean individual blood sugar response to the same piece of fruit can swing widely from person to person. Plenty of people managing diabetes now track their own fruit-by-fruit response with a continuous glucose monitor, turning these general numbers into personal ones, and the results often surprise them. One person tolerates a fruit from the caution list just fine, while another spikes hard on something from the recommended 9. Think of what follows as the best available starting point, not a replacement for watching how your own body actually responds over time. On to the 9, starting with blueberries. There's a real reason blueberries lead this list. Anthocyanins, the pigments responsible for that deep, almost black-blue color, load up every handful. One meta-analysis of observational studies tied regular berry consumption to an 18% drop in type 2 diabetes risk, and lab research fills in the mechanism. Blueberry anthocyanins reduce the overexpression of a glucose transporter called glucose-2 in liver cells, keeping glucose-stimulated insulin release in better balance, while carrying anti-inflammatory effects on the side, which matters because chronic inflammation feeds diabetic complications over time. A trial using mixed berries rather than blueberries alone found a lower serum insulin response after eating compared to a control group, suggesting this benefit isn't riding on one single berry's back. Raspberries, cousins in the same berry family, deserve a mention here too. 8 grams of fiber per cup, the highest of any commonly eaten berry. Worth remembering next time berries go on sale and you're deciding which container to grab. Simple math earns strawberries their spot. 5 grams of sugar in a typical serving compared to roughly 16 grams in a similar portion of grapes, that's the gap doing the work. Factor in the fiber and a glycemic index safely under 40, and you land on one of the easiest fruits anywhere to eat in a normal portion without a blood sugar consequence trailing behind it. Even a generous cup rarely pushes the glycemic load into risky territory, which makes strawberries one of the more forgiving fruits on this entire list. Cherries land in that same low bracket. Clinical and nutrition sources cite them again and again, usually in the same breath as strawberries and citrus, among the safest fruit choices going. Eat them fresh, pit removed rather than dried or candied, and both the sugar content and the glycemic load stay in check. Citrus as a whole, oranges, grapefruit, lemons, and limes, gets named directly by the American Diabetes Association as a superstar category for blood sugar. Low glycemic index and solid fiber team up to release sugar slowly, and vitamin C tags along as a bonus with nothing to do with blood sugar but welcome regardless. Lemons and limes rarely get eaten solo, yet they carry the same low glycemic profile as their sweeter relatives, and swapping them in for sugary dressings or marinades is an easy way to work citrus into a meal without adding fruit sugar you never meant to. Eat the segment rather than drink the juice, since that's what preserves the fiber making citrus behave so differently from citrus juice on a blood sugar test. Pectin is what apples bring to this table that nothing else quite matches. A soluble fiber concentrated in the skin that physically slows how fast the fruit sugar reaches your bloodstream. Their glycemic index sits around 38, and research into pectin's effect on diabetic patients has reported insulin requirements dropping by roughly 35%. Eat the skin. That's where the benefit actually lives, and peeling an apple strips out most of the fiber that earned it a spot here in the first place. Pears track almost identically, glycemic index also near 38, linked in research to improved insulin sensitivity over time. Same rule as apples applies, eat them whole, skin included, fresh rather than canned in syrup, since that's where most of the fiber sits. Kiwi is the one people always forget. Its glycemic index falls in a moderate band, somewhere between 39 and 50 depending on ripeness and source. But it carries something unusual, a compound called inositol that research suggests may improve insulin sensitivity. Pair that with high fiber and a heavy dose of vitamin C, and kiwi punches well above what its glycemic index number alone would suggest, especially once you count the skin, which most people slice away and which actually holds extra fiber nobody eats. Peaches post one of the lowest glycemic index scores of any fresh fruit, around 28, backed by strong fiber and antioxidant content. Low risk, easy to build into a daily routine, whether eaten solo or tossed into a bowl alongside other low glycemic fruit like berries or citrus. Then there's avocado, which most people don't even file under fruit, though botanically that's exactly what it is. 50 grams gets you about 80 calories, 3 grams of fiber, 5 grams of monounsaturated fat, 1 gram of polyunsaturated fat, and 0 grams of naturally occurring sugar, with more than 3/4 of that fat falling into the healthy category. A national health survey tracking more than 6,000 Hispanic adults found regular avocado eaters carrying a 28% lower diabetes rate than non-eaters. Fiber and healthy fat working in tandem slow digestion, extend fullness, and help stabilize blood sugar after a meal. Precisely the job a diabetic eating pattern needs done, and avocado pairs especially well alongside other fruit here, since its fat can blunt the blood sugar response of whatever else shares the plate. That's the 9. Now, the 8 that deserve a second look before landing on your plate, and to be clear up front, none of these 8 are forbidden outright. What they share is a tendency to get eaten in bigger portions than people realize, or a natural sugar content that climbs faster than expected under specific conditions. Watermelon opens this half, and it's the fruit people get wrong in both directions at once. Genuinely high, its glycemic index runs 72 to 80, near the top of anything measured. But watermelon is 92% water, and that's exactly what keeps its glycemic load down at 4 to 8. 2 thin slices, and the load lands around 6, low. Double the portion to 4 slices, and it climbs to roughly 13, medium territory. Here's the catch though, the sugar still hits the bloodstream fast enough to trigger a quick insulin release even when the total carb load stays modest. Portion size decides the outcome, and watermelon juice erases what little fiber protection the whole fruit offered to begin with. Pair a small portion with protein or fat, the same trick that helps several other fruits on this list, and that fast insulin response softens considerably. Pineapple's glycemic index runs 51 to 66, moderate sliding into high. Some fiber comes along for the ride, roughly 1.5 grams per serving, slowing absorption slightly, and a 3/4 cup portion keeps the glycemic load near 6, manageable. Let the portion creep upward though, and the sugar content adds up fast, and once it's dried or juiced, that fiber buffer is all but gone. Fresh or canned in water rather than syrup is the version worth reaching for. Pineapple also tends to arrive pre-cut in a bowl at gatherings, which means it gets eaten more casually than fruit requiring peeling or pitting first, worth remembering the next time a serving spoon sits right next to it. Ripeness rewrites the whole equation for bananas, making them trickier than most people assume. Green and unripe, a banana's glycemic index sits around 30, low enough to comfortably join the first 9. Resistant starch is behind that number, a compound the body treats more like fiber than sugar, passing largely undigested through the small intestine and feeding gut bacteria instead of spiking blood glucose. Ripening converts that resistant starch into ordinary sugar, and the glycemic index climbs right along with it, 51 to 62 once the banana turns yellow and spotted, past 65 once those spots go brown. The fruit hasn't changed identity. Its chemistry has, and for blood sugar purposes, a green banana and a brown spotted one, despite coming from the same bunch, are functionally two different foods. Preparation shifts the number further still, since research into ripening stage and cooking method found that how a banana gets prepared, raw, boiled, or otherwise cooked, changes its available glucose and resistant starch on top of whatever ripeness already set, meaning the greenest banana in your fruit bowl, and that same banana turned into a cooked dish aren't automatically equivalent either. Mangoes cut both ways, and the research doesn't pretend otherwise. Glycemic index sits at 51 to 56, moderate rather than extreme, and a 24-week randomized trial found pre-diabetic adults eating roughly 300 grams of mango daily saw improved fasting glucose and better insulin sensitivity than a control group eating an isocaloric granola bar, with better body composition outcomes riding alongside. Real, documented benefit, and yet a single cup of sliced mango still carries about 23 grams of natural sugar. Easy to underestimate precisely because mango doesn't taste as aggressively sweet as that number implies. Part of the explanation might sit in how mango sugar is built. Its fructose gets processed largely by the liver rather than entering the bloodstream directly, which can slow the overall blood sugar response compared to the same total sugar arriving in a different form. The takeaway isn't to cut mango out. It's to measure it instead of eyeballing it, treating 300 grams, roughly one average mango, as a ceiling rather than a starting point. Grapes get underestimated more than any fruit on this list because nobody eats them one at a time, they get eaten by the handful. Around 16 grams of sugar sits in a typical serving, more than triple what a comparable portion of strawberries holds. No chewing required, no cutting, no peeling, and that ease is exactly why grapes vanish from a bowl faster than anything else here, sugar load climbing right alongside without anyone noticing. Some newer grape varieties are already being bred and studied specifically for a gentler blood sugar profile, which tells you plant breeders have clocked the same problem, though the grapes sitting in most stores today still carry the same sugar-dense reputation they always have. Dehydrating concentrates sugar in dried fruit, raisins, dates, apricots the same way dehydrating concentrates anything. 15 grams of carbohydrate rides along in just 2 tablespoons of raisins alone, a small volume punching well above its weight. Newer research complicates the old assumption here. 2. Several clinical trials found dried fruit produced a lower than expected glycemic response, and even modestly improved post-meal glucose and insulin compared to white bread, with some of that research stretching beyond a single meal, showing dates, apricots, raisins, and sultanas improving not just the immediate spike but HbA1c, the longer-term marker of blood sugar control, against high glycemic foods over time. None of that solves the portion problem, though. Guidance for people with diabetes typically caps dried fruit around 1 to 2 dates a day, precisely because a handful disappears before anyone registers how much sugar that handful just delivered. Pair a small amount with almonds or walnuts, a common recommendation, since the fat and protein there slow the fruit sugar down and turn a snack that could spike blood sugar solo into one that behaves considerably better. Lychee carries a moderate glycemic index near 50, similar territory to mango, but its natural sugar concentration runs high enough that recommended servings top out around 100 grams, 9 or 10 pieces. Cross that line, and lychee sugar starts working against blood sugar stability instead of sitting neutral. And because the fruit is small enough to eat several at a time without thinking, that ceiling gets crossed more often than people expect. Closing the list, jackfruit. Depending on ripeness and preparation, its glycemic index ranges anywhere from 40 to 63, wide enough that no single number tells the whole story. High fiber helps regulate the release, but natural sugar climbs sharply as the fruit ripens, which is exactly why guidance for people managing type 2 diabetes caps jackfruit somewhere between a half cup and a full cup a day. Unripe jackfruit, often used as a savory meat substitute, behaves nothing like the sweet, ripe fruit served as dessert, and the two shouldn't be judged by the same standard. One more thing before we close, and it applies equally to every fruit on both lists. Canned fruit and heavy syrup and fruit juice of any kind. Both strip away the fiber that slows sugar absorption, and both pile on concentrated sugar the fruit never started with. A fruit sitting comfortably on the first list can start behaving like something off the second list the moment it's canned in syrup or blended into juice. Blame the processing, not the fruit. If canned is the only option on hand, reaching for the version packed in water or its own juice rather than syrup keeps it much closer to its fresh counterpart. Wondering how to actually put this into practice rather than just filing it away? The pattern researchers keep circling back to is simple. Spread fruit across the day instead of loading it into one sitting, since 2 smaller servings put less pressure on blood sugar than 1 large one does. Pair fruit from either list with protein or fat, a handful of nuts, a spoonful of yogurt, a few slices of avocado, since that combination slows digestion and softens whatever spike would otherwise follow. Favor whole fruit over juice nearly every time, fresh or frozen over canned in syrup. And treat the 8 fruits on the caution list as fruits to measure, not fruits to avoid, since a half cup of ripe jackfruit or a small bowl of watermelon is a very different proposition than an unmeasured plateful of either. None of these rules are complicated. They just ask you to know which fruit you're holding before you reach for it, which is exactly what these 2 lists just gave you. So here's where that leaves you. 9 fruits, low in sugar density or high in fiber, that slow their own sugar release and in several cases carry research linking them to measurably lower diabetes risk: blueberries, strawberries, cherries, citrus, apples, pears, kiwi, peaches, and avocado. 8 fruits worth a second look at the portion before they land on the plate, not because they're forbidden, but because sugar density, ripeness, or sheer ease of overeating makes portion size the deciding factor. Watermelon, pineapple, ripe bananas, mangoes, grapes, dried fruit, lychee, and jackfruit. Whether a fruit is good or bad is rarely the real difference between these 2 lists. Fiber, ripeness, and portion almost always are, and all 3 sit entirely within your control regardless of which fruit lands on the plate. None of this replaces your own doctor or dietitian, who can weigh your specific blood sugar targets, your medication, and how your body has actually responded to these fruits before. But with the gap between glycemic index and glycemic load now in hand, along with what ripeness does to a banana, why pectin matters in an apple's skin, and the plain fact that a handful of grapes carries more sugar than most people assume, you'll know exactly which question to ask the next time fruit lands on your plate, and exactly how much of it makes sense on your particular day.